Hey guys, this week's episode is my conversation with Harry Tong from Tennis Spin. I had a great time talking with Harry. He has such a good personality, he's extremely funny, and a total gearhead. No wonder why he has had such success online with all his videos. We discuss things like what are the hot seller essentials for any pro shop, mistakes that pros make when making equipment recommendations, under and overrated products, and many other things. I hope that you're enjoying the episodes so far. We have had such a variety of guests, and of course, there are many more to come. Remember that there are 17 episodes so far, and they're all pretty different from each other, so make sure to check those out when you have the time. Lastly, remember to follow Vida Tennis on Facebook and Instagram. We're also now on YouTube, and you can always email me at vidatennispodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions or any recommendations. Without any further ado, get ready to learn from one of the best out there, only here at Vida Tennis. Here's my conversation with Harry Tong. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vida Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. I am Jennifer Gelhaus, and today I'm talking with Harry Tong. He has been the managing director at Brad Gilbert Tennis Nation since 2009, is a racket technician and creator of Tennis Spin, a YouTube channel dedicated to fans and students of the game, where he shares his knowledge and reviews on all kinds of tennis gear, from shoes to rackets, teaches viewers how to string, and he discusses different topics from coaching tips to proper tennis etiquette. His channel has over 60,000 subscribers, and he has over 1,000 videos uploaded to his channel. Welcome, Harry, to Vida Tennis, and thank you for being here today. Did I get all of that right?
Oh my God. Thank you, Jennifer. That was awesome. You're hired. Can you do that for me on my video?
Yes, I've watched your videos. I'm a fan.
Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself.
We were just offline and you were kind of telling me about how you're also working at a tennis club. You're at the California Tennis Club, right? You're doing their billing and their pro shop.
That's correct. In San Francisco. I've kind of been attached to that club for, it's been like 20 some years. It was like my real first job out of college. So I started off my tennis career at age 18 at a small pro shop in the financial district of San Francisco. And that's where I kind of learned how to string. I learned about rackets. I was around people who taught me things. After that summer was over, I went to a place called Lombardi Sports, which was a bigger store that had skis and hiking and biking. And I helped in their tennis department while I was going to college. So I basically worked like 30 to 40 hours a week while going to college at the same time. It took me about 7.5 years to get my college degree. I'd rather work than go to school. I wasn't much of a student. So I'd rather learn about the tennis industry rather than the books industry. I mean, I have a degree in political science, which I figured out was the easiest degree to get. I tried to do business management. I couldn't pass finance. And I couldn't pass any of the math stuff. I mean, I didn't understand, why do I need to know about this stuff? It's all about money, and there's a calculator and online to help you figure things out, right? So I guess I got it after the 7.5 years. I got a degree in tennis.
That's hilarious. And you said also offline that you played a little bit of college tennis.
Yeah, I played 1 year in a JC at City College, and I wasn't very good. I wasn't very good at all. So, but I liked the sport. I enjoyed it a lot. I feel like, my certain people just have a ceiling, and my ceiling was pretty low. I mean, I just enjoyed being around tennis, playing it. I would have preferred to be better, but I don't have that ability like a lot of people out there. But my ceiling was just on the lower side. But it was fun while I was out there competing.
And were you always kind of a gearhead?
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm like most typical people. The racket will make the player. I tell these kids, especially at the tennis club that I still work at, these kids they're so cute. They're they're 12 years old all the way up to 20 years old. And literally on a daily basis, they're, oh, I have to have that Head Gravity Pro. It's going to make me so much better. And I tell them, just because you have Thor's hammer, don't mean you're Thor.
That's a good one. Hilarious. And so were you always comfortable with being in front of the camera? What made you decide to start a YouTube channel?
It actually all started with COVID, but let me backtrack a little bit. We were trying to make my kid, who was a little speech impaired, she was about, I want to say 5 years old at the time, and she was delayed in speaking, but she would always watch like Ryan Toy Review or those kids that just open up toys and be silly. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what if we do that with you? And she was like, yeah, let's try. And we thought we could get her out of her shell. And so we shot a bunch of videos. Whenever we turned on the video, the camera though, and say, go, she would be like, come on, let's go. So we spent like the whole summer shooting her. And like, we literally had to feed her the lines. I'm like, come on, what'd you think of the toy? How to go? And she would just like freeze up. And so one day, I remember the day, I was like, watch daddy do this. So all I did was I was at the shop. She comes to work with me. I took a can of each of the tennis balls we had, a Wilson, a Penn, a Dunlop, and I put them on top of the counter. And I basically said, are there any differences in weight of these three balls? So I basically opened each one up, brought a food scale out, and said, well, let's take a look at the Wilson. And I dropped it down and I took a number. I did same thing with the Penn and the Dunlop. And I was like, is there a difference in these balls in weight? So that was my first video. And one of our workers here said, why don't you do that on a weekly basis and then teach your kid to do it? And then it kind of, I started doing that weekly. And then that kind of spurred on the channel. That was in like November of 19. And then my kids started like saying, you do it, daddy, you do it. So we did it once a week until COVID hit. March 15th was the day that our store had to close down. It was a mandatory closing. You could not open your store unless you were like a food store or a gas station. So what we did was we came into the store and just shot videos. The store was closed. We just shot videos and we started putting up content every day. And my wife, who shoots my videos, was saying, you're probably going to run out of content. Well, 1,000-something videos later, and I still got more. So, but that's how it kind of grew. I mean, I didn't think anything of it. The main thing I really wanted to do was teach people to do it themselves, because I get the same questions asked of me over and over again. Like the number one question, what's the best racket out there? The better question is, what's the best racket for you?
Right. Yes. And that's so interesting. Does your daughter still do videos, or did she kind of stop doing that?
She kind of stopped doing that. We took her to as far as we could get.
Yeah. So, then it became your thing. So
it became my thing. Yeah. How ironic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's, man, now you have over what did I say? 1,000 videos. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And it's still going.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Did you start a online retail with the store during COVID, or it was just about making the videos and kind of keeping people engaged?
Yeah, I mean, I just basically wanted to educate people. I didn't want to open up an online store because I didn't have the time to manage it. I mean, I managed 2 places already on the retail side. To add a third, and I've tried doing online stores before about 15 years ago. It's a lot of work. You got to be in front of a computer, entering the products with the codes and doing the order boxes and then shipping them out. It's I need another person to actually do that. So I decided not to do that. I only sell merch out of the store, like the caps and the t-shirts and maybe a keychain here or there. But people will email me and say, hey, I want a Fed custom racket, and I'll do it that way. But other than that, I don't try to sell the stuff online.
So what do you think is the key to selling at a pro shop and being able to compete with online retailers? Because as you know, online retail has been the death of a lot of pro shops.
Totally. I mean, when I first started in that little pro shop 30 some years ago, there was a lot of them. I mean, literally San Francisco had at least 7 or 8 pro shops or tennis specific or within some kind of a big store. Now there is 2. And it's tough. I mean, people don't really want to stand in front of a stringing machine for 8 hours stringing rackets all day. They'd rather surf the web and get paid doing nothing. It's a different mentality. And the people who were doing it, like the people who taught me, they're all retired. They don't do it anymore. It's tough. I mean, when online came, I want to say at least 4 of those stores left within 2 years because Tennis Warehouse was just so easy. They got it at their doorstep, as you guys know. It's like Amazon.
Right.
And it was strung, ready to go. But I feel like the online guys right now are overwhelmed. I mean, I can see by how long it takes for them to string a racket and get it shipped. It's about a week or more now. So that tells me that they're not able to get the people to string those rackets and get that shipped to you, as fast as like an Amazon because of that labor intensive stringing. Whereas you can walk to your pro shop and hopefully get it same day or next day, because tennis is about yesterday. It's like, I need my racket strung yesterday or I need a racket now. So that's where I feel like the pro shops are ahead now because the online guys just got too big and they don't have the staffing like everybody else.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of, especially seasonal clubs. I'm involved with seasonal clubs a lot in the Northeast. And well, I guess it doesn't just apply to a seasonal club, but let's say a new director at a club and, that person has been asked to start a pro shop and it's totally a new thing, maybe for the club or just for that director at that club. Do you have any kind of advice or any kind of strategies? Because it's so hard to know how to stock, how to do inventory, all those things when you're just starting at a club and you don't want to get stuck with old stuff. Are there any products maybe that you would totally stay away from for that first year or any kind of advice for pros that you might have?
That's tough. I've advised a bunch of clubs in this and I basically said, get a stringing machine, either string yourself or find a pro to string or bring in somebody who can string and maybe like run the front desk or do something else at the same time, and bring in the strings that you sell and you recommend. Bring in some grips. You got to just bring in the stuff that will sell because everybody's going to need a string job. Everybody's going to need grips. Right. Obviously, tennis balls. If you're going to bring in clothes, bring in the club's logo clothes because that could sit. Don't bring fashion stuff in. Those cute little dresses won't look good sitting there for 2 years. So I would start there. Be careful with tennis rackets because you could get stuck with them too. So bring in what the pros believe in. Like if it's a Babolat Pure Drive, bring that in. That's the #1 selling racket in the last 20 years. Wilson Clash, Wilson Ultra, like just staples in the market that have been top sellers, and get maybe 1 or 2 of them just to show and get some demos in to try. If you need them, just order them, just so you don't get stuck with them later on. Yeah, because trends change quickly.
Absolutely. And that's great advice. I actually went through that process last summer And that's exactly what I did. I wrote in logo stuff, not even like Nike stuff, just like some random brand.
It's difficult to work with Nike.
Yeah, I mean, it's also really expensive to if you're making an investment in that. I brought in, obviously, like you said, balls, even though you don't make any money on those most of the time, but balls, grips. I did a demo program, and then if they liked it, they could buy it. And I actually work with a new brand called Diadem. I don't know if you're with them, but
I'm familiar.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I couldn't really get a deal with anyone during COVID. Everyone was like, no, we don't have gear. They couldn't ship anything. So that's kind of how I discovered Diadem. And I was actually really happy with the rackets, the balls. Everything turned out pretty good. And I was surprised to see that I think the item that sold the most were hats.
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone needs a hat at a club, at least. I mean, I don't know at a retail store, but in a club, like everybody just kind of needs a hat kind of last minute. And they were kind of cool hats. They had the logo and stuff. So yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you for that.
I'll tell you a secret.
Yeah.
I make more money and sell more hats, sweatbands, and socks than I make in all of my clothes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Because exactly what you said. Everybody's going to buy a hat. They're going to forget their socks. And they're going to need their sweatbands. Do they need the clothes? Not really.
Exactly. So, unless it has a special logo that they're proud to wear. And it's like a very specific thing. Otherwise, you can just basically find it online.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are there any mistakes that you see coaches make when they're making a recommendation to their players when it comes to maybe rackets or stringing? Any common themes that you see going on?
Yes. And I don't want to be overcritical about coaches because I do like and respect them. So I'll put that out there first. I feel like most coaches only know what they know, which is usually what they play with. So I'll just give you an example of back in the day. About 20-something years ago, I had this one coach who played with a Wilson 6195 Classic. I don't know if you're familiar with the racket, but it's about a 12-ounce racket, 95 square inch head, very stiff, very heavy.
Yeah.
So he sends everybody, all of his students, to buy this racket. Whether they're 12 years old or 70 years old, everybody's getting a 6195.
Oh my gosh. That's gotta be so tough for a beginner.
I'm like, this isn't your racket. You shouldn't be getting this. But because the coach loves that racket so much, he feels like everybody else should be using the same thing. So I feel like the coaches only know what they know and like. And I feel like telling coaches, try other rackets, be a little more broad spectrum and kind of fit the need to your student, which I think they're doing more today. But, a lot of coaches are still kind of stuck in their own ways.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. I mean, I was never a gearhead. I don't know much, to be honest with you, about rackets and strings. And it's hard for me to make recommendations sometimes because I'm like, just go with something easy. If you're a beginner, like a light racket. I try to give them actually the opposite of what I like because I know at least, I've never ventured out of what I like. It was like, if it's not, what is it? If it's not broken, don't try to fix it, which is probably not the right attitude. I probably could do better with better gear and a better string and more customization, but I just never played around with it, to be honest with you. I like a stiff racket with high tension, which like nobody does high tension.
How tight?
I like a 62 pound, like, people like look at me like I'm crazy, but like when I was a junior player, that's what people used. And so I just never moved on from that. I never played or experimented with lower tension. The only thing I would notice is if I had a racket that had a low tension, I was like, I hate this. Everything's going out. So I just had it in my mind, like I just have to have a stiff and high tension racket.
Let me ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
I'll advise you. What kind of racket is it going in?
So I've changed. When I started teaching, I switched to a lighter racket. So I started using a pure drive to kind of
Hmm.
take it a little bit easier on my arm when I'm
Hmm.
teaching because you're like feeding a
Yeah,
lot.
you're
And
feeding. Hmm.
yeah, but I used to use a heavier. I used to use when I was with Babla, I used to use what was it called? The Hurricane?
Pro Hurricane. Yep.
Yeah.
The yellow
Mhm.
one or the white one?
The what, sorry?
The yellow one or the white one?
It was white. I think white and
Pro
red.
Hurricane regular. Okay. Okay. On a pure drive at 62. That actually isn't horrible. Where you teaching? Where did you play at? Is it in the heat?
Well, I grew up in Venezuela. So as a junior player, I was in
Oh,
heat. So I
so it was
was
hot. Okay.
hot as hell, yeah, and
So
humid.
that
And then I played college in Tennessee.
got it. So that makes sense because you're playing in the hot, the air is thinner, you got a semi-stiff racket. So 62 makes sense. 62 makes sense. And that hurricane drops tension pretty quickly anyway. So you want to hold it throughout your match so that you can keep the balls in. So that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, good. But how much do you think, in your opinion? I mean, obviously you're a gearhead, and you love being precise with the tension and all that, which I totally respect. I think that's so professional, and I wish I could be more like that. But how much do you think it is mental, and how much do you think it's actually needing different gear? Because we all know players that have four different rackets and they rotate them because quote unquote it's not working that day. What's your thoughts on that? Because some of it is mental.
Totally. So here's the spectrum of the people that I know and work with. I get these people that are exactly what you say, and they have four rackets. They want them strung, kind of like Roger Federer, one after the other, like in the same time frame, and at the same tension,
Yeah.
grip the same way, and then they're happy that way, right? But it's just if it works for you, then fine. You're just going to be that guy. I feel like if you get them off their groove, if you dropped a pin and you were off and they knew about it, and you strung that last racket an hour later, that it'll start grinding in their head, and they're gonna find excuses, and if to lose, you
Mhm.
know. So I feel like if you're that person, that you're just going to make excuses for yourself to lose.
Which happens a lot.
And then I know the other guy who's played, Division 1 tennis and literally plays with a 12-year-old racket strung with the deadest strings because they don't want to break it until the string breaks. And I'm literally telling them, I was like, dude, your strings are dead. It's like, it's okay. I don't really want to string my racket right now.
That's
And,
me.
lit- and literally the guy goes and spanks everybody like 6-0, 6-0. And so I'm like, you're a perfect example of somebody, who I admire. It doesn't really matter to you. I'll beat you with anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just your own mindset. I don't know if it's like how you were raised or like I don't. It's just how people click, I guess. I mean, I'm very anal. I'm kind of in between the two. I mean, it just, as long as I have something that I like out of the four rackets that I have, I'm fine that day. I don't need everything to be that precise. It's the people that are precise that I think have a harder time. You
Yeah.
know, so if I was that person's coach, I would just like start throwing them off sometimes. I was like, we're not stringing those four today. You're just gonna have it. It's like the stringer had got ill and couldn't string your rackets. What are you gonna do? All right, we got no warm up court for you. What are you gonna do? It's like if you keep doing those things with that person, it's like they've already lost before they already got on the court.
Exactly. Yes. I love that you made that point, because that's actually great advice if you have a kid that is like that. I Yeah, I hate to say that. It's so funny because I want to be more like you. Like I want to know more and be more in it, And I was, when I was a junior player, there was even in college, there was a saying, it was like all gear, no fear. It's like you saw the
Hmm.
kid all geared up and you're like,
Hmm.
I got this.
Right, right, exactly.
But now, especially I think as we get older and our game changes, and if you're a teaching pro and now you're teaching and maybe you want to use a lighter racket, like I was saying that I switched to a different racket because it kind of saved my arm a little bit. It does make sense. And like you're talking about, like I never even thought about that when I played, because I played always in hot weather, but
Mhm.
altitude, heat, like those things absolutely have to make a difference. So it's
Totally.
so important to be aware of all those things. You can't pretend you know it all. And if anything's going to give you the slightest of edges, especially at the higher levels, like you absolutely want to take advantage of that.
Totally. Totally agree. I'll give you an example. I string at tournaments, and Jack Sock about 12 years ago, he entered this to kind of tune himself up for the next tournament. He was kind of coming back from an injury. So he was playing at this tournament, top seed. He hands me four of his rackets. He uses Luxilon ALU rough. And he says on Monday, 29 pounds. And I looked at him like, 29? He's like, 29 pounds. I'm like, okay. So I do him. He comes back in 2 hours and picks him up. Same time next morning, Tuesday, 30 pounds. Right? And then all four again. I'm looking at his racket, though. One of them never was played with. Like, literally has no fuzz, not moved at all. I was like, Jack, this one wasn't played with. And he gives me that look. He goes, doesn't matter. I can tell the difference. Just string it. I'm like, okay, it's your money. So
Yeah, exactly.
he proceeds to do that every day, four, used or not, four, every day.
Oh,
He won the tournament and had a fat stringing bill. But yeah, they're used or not, he can tell. 24 hours later, it's sitting there, loses tension. He can feel it.
that's amazing. I feel like the higher level players can usually absolutely tell the difference in everything,
Mhm.
and their tension, even in the ball and how the court is playing. So I get that part too, but I was just never like that. But how often do you think tennis players should be demoing new rackets?
I mean, I always just tell people when they're thinking about trying rackets, I'm like, what do you think about your racket? I'm like, I like it. Like, what's wrong with it? Nothing. I get the same answer. It's like, then why do you want to try a new racket? Because I feel like there's a whole new world out there, and I could be part of it. And I'm like,
Yes.
okay. And my a prime example, yesterday, this lady plays 3-0. She just got both of her Yonex rackets strung. And she was talking to me. It's like, I want to try a new racket. I was like, you just got your racket strung. He's like, and I was like, why do you want to try a new racket? She's like, I don't know. I just want to try. So that's the thing about tennis, is that there's so many options. There's so many ways to, I don't know if it's going to improve your racket, but at least get a different feel. And there's so many options out there that people just, I mean, I think for her, it might be like trying on a new dress and seeing how it looks on me. Like the a lot of the racket sales, at least here where I am, half the time it has to do with color. Like, I feel like you put a white racket on the wall, it just pops out of the wall, and I have to have that one. But you haven't tried it yet. Doesn't matter.
It looks good. You look good. You play good. You play good, right?
Matches my outfit.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. What do you think is the most overrated and most underrated gear?
Wow. I think Babolat is, I don't want to say they're overrated, but they're super popular.
Yeah.
And from what I see, everybody wants to be like the Joneses. My friend has a pure drive, my friend has an arrow, and I have to have a pure drive or an arrow so that I can be with the in crowd. I see that a lot, at least where I am. And that catapulted those two rackets to being number one and number two. Yeah. Rafa definitely helped a lot.
Yeah.
And now Alcaraz is killing it with the Arrow 98. That literally was a dead racket until he picked it up and became number one. And now we can't keep him stocked. Neither can Babolat.
Wow.
So I don't want to say it's overrated, but literally it was a dead racket for 2 years.
Yeah.
So the player made the racket there.
Yeah.
In terms of underrated, I feel like Yonex is underrated brand, but they're definitely getting momentum. People are kind of rediscovering them, and they're doing a really, really good job in their technology and their design of rackets. I mean, they were stumbling for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years there, but finally, got the gear that we like now. So they're doing a good job in designing and manufacturing.
And I agree. And I totally get that, because when I was a junior player, late juniors, that's when the Arrow, I think, kind of came out, and Rafa was making it popular. And it was like everybody just had to have that racket, because it was like that look and that connection to Rafa. And I think a lot of players in tennis are so loyal to a particular brand, right? Like you're either a Babolat guy, or a Wilson guy, or whatever. For whatever reason, like that seems to be the case. So it's got to be so difficult for like a new brand to come in and be able to break into the market. A brand like Diadem, for example. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh God, yeah.
We come in and do that because people are so particular about their brand,
Totally. So a new manufacturer coming in is going to have a very, very difficult time, but you're probably too young to remember. Babolat was that outsider at one time. When I was growing up, it was Prince and Wilson, a little bit of Head, a little bit of Dunlop. Yonex was kind of around, but Prince was the name in the game. Babolat was that person that was like a Diadem coming in from the outside and basically catching fire. I mean, they basically gave rackets away to get it going. Like they went to colleges and say, who wants free rackets? We will sponsor your whole team. They go out to junior tournaments and say, hey, do you want a sponsorship? Like 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, literally giving the stuff away. When I first saw a lot, I was at a Cal Stanford match, and I was looking at, I was like, what is that blue racket with the two lines on the side? It looks pretty cool. And the guy playing with it was really good. And that was my first, look at a Babolat racket. I had never heard of it. Like it didn't reach me yet at the store. So they were doing the grassroots of it. They were seeding the kids. And then hopefully they would grow and continue to use the Babolat rackets. So what they forced the retailers to do was to call Babolat. So basically, like they make the kids come into the store because they were using them and had them already, and said, do you carry Babolats? And I'm like, what is a Babolat? And so we started asking what a Babolat was and where we could get it, because these kids were using it and wanted it. So it was like a reversal in the sales strategy. I mean, obviously you have to have super deep pockets to do this, because you're literally giving product away and a lot of it, but it worked for them. I mean, I've actually been on a table talking to Eric Babolat before in Colorado. And I basically asked him, I was like, what's your secret? I know the process. And his 2 words, Rafa Nadal. And I was like, he's like, we literally got lucky. We got Andy Roddick first, and then Kim Kleisters. But literally when we got this kid from Mallorca, the racket sales skyrocketed. That catapulted us to number one.
So what's the story there? I don't know. I'm not familiar with this story. Was he a junior player when he was playing with Babolat, or
They got him when he was young. They found him in Mallorca at an academy and said, "Hey, you want to play with Babolat?" And he's like, "Sure, yeah, I'll do it." And literally, they just gave the right racket to the right kid.
Wow. Definitely the right person. Oh my gosh. Yeah, did they get lucky, huh?
But you could see it. Technofiber did the same thing. Technofiber gave Swiatek a racket. She's playing number one in the world, playing with her own signature racket from Technofiber now. Daniil Medvedev, same thing, Technofiber. So it's all about luck of the draw. Who you sponsor, how they become number one. If they become number one, the more exposure, the more sales you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, makes total sense. And you've been following rackets, for quite some time now, but what do you think is the most exciting advance in technology in rackets? Let's stay with rackets for a second, that we've had in maybe the last decade or so.
I think the Wilson Clash is the most exciting racket that's come out in a long, long time. I mean, it's a racket that most people can play with, but not everybody will like. But it is, I want to say, good for you, meaning that it's good for your extremities. It's good for your arm. If you're worried about tennis elbow, it's great for that. It's a very, very, I don't know if you've ever tried one. But
I like it.
Okay. Yeah. So 80% of the people will like it and understand it. 20% of the people will not like it at all. It's just they don't understand the racket. They don't understand why it flexes. They just want a firm, stiff racket. But because of the softness in the racket and the flex in the racket, all you have to do is swing regular and keep swinging. The racket will do the rest for you. The one problem with the racket is when you hit your first couple of balls and they go out and you launch it, people start to hold up on it a little bit more. When you hold up on it, it doesn't like it. Like, it wants you to swing faster, turn up on the ball, provide a little more spin, and the racket will actually help you make the ball dive down. But as long as you swing, the racket will help you. And I do recommend that racket for most people who have arm problems because it is soft. It will absorb the ball shock that goes into that string bed. Gotcha.
I always just kind of stuck with, I hate to say it, but honestly, whatever racket I could get for free.
And I don't blame you.
Yeah, I mean, and even at tennis pro, right? If you get a rep to kind of help you out and get you some free gear, I'm like, you got
it. Totally.
So that I was very lucky to get that with Babolat, and then I moved and kind of lost that, but I stuck with Babolat. But I like Wilson a lot too. And what's the Wilson racket called? The one that's black with green?
Blade.
The Blade, yeah. The Blade, I like that one the best out of the Wilson, probably because it is stiff. But what is so special about the Clash or new in its technology that is exciting or that helps?
Because it's so soft. That's the thing. Okay. It's actually one of the softest rackets made. Like, when you can literally put it on the table and just push down on half the racket and it'll bend. It'll bend.
I want to try it again to see.
So what they say is, if you want the racket to firm up, swing fast. If you want touch on it, then slow up, like for a drop volley or something like that. It'll dwell a little longer and give you more touch.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more exciting things coming. There's a new racket called the Shift that has half Clash technology and half regular technology. So it's going to bend this way. Let's say this is the face of a racket. It's going to bend this way like a Clash, but it's going to bend this way like a regular racket. So for those who want more spin, it's going to dwell on that racket a little longer when you come up on the ball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And there's so many different things now that you can do with stringing. You can have hybrids, all these different strings. Where does someone start? Does it depend on level, or does it depend on what they've already kind of played with? If they were interested in maybe playing around with different combinations of tension or types of strings or anything like that. Do you have any advice for someone like that?
Yeah. I mean, if the best case scenario is if I could watch the player, then I can probably recommend better. You as a teaching pro see your players. I a lot of the times don't get that advantage. So I'm not guessing, but I'm giving my best calculated guess as to what they need. If they're like beginners or somebody who's kind of starting off again after 30 years, which I get a lot of customers in that realm, the first question I ask is, do you break strings? And if they say no, then I put in a multi, like a good multi, like a head velocity, gamma, TNT, touch, just to get them back in, because they're probably holding it with a continental or an Eastern grip. They're going to hit pretty flat. So I don't want to put a poly in there that's too stiff. I want the shots to be familiar to them.
Okay.
And so they can, once they start getting back rolling or learn a little bit more about their own technique and then get a little higher in their rating, then, and maybe breaking a string or two, is when I'll start, comboing, like maybe putting a super thin polyester on the main and then stick with like a multi on the cross, just to give them the feel of a poly and what the capabilities that a poly can do for their game. But I don't like to put people in the polys just because it's the cool thing, because I went through that myself 20 years ago, and I would literally try a poly, try a blend, go poly and natural gut. And I just couldn't do it with my strokes, the way it felt. I just kept going back to the multis. And finally, about 5 years ago, I finally found a poly that I liked and that I stuck with. But it's a totally different feeling, especially if you're used to like a nylon-based multi-filament string. It's something that is foreign to a lot of people.
That's why people so many times feel overwhelmed, because there's so many combinations, so many things that you can change in a racket to make it softer, stiffer, even, you can just change the strings and completely changes the feel of a racket. So it can be quite overwhelming, I think, for people. But are there any, just kind of shifting gears here, are there any changes that you would like to see in the industry?
Wow. Oh, man. I would actually like when companies make a good product, whether it be rackets or shoes, to kind of keep it around a little longer. Because, I feel like every racket has a cycle, whether it be 2 years or 3 years, depending on the company, that a lot of the times they pull the rackets at its peak. It's like you're selling this racket and it's doing extremely well, but because the production schedule says that we have to pull it now and put the new one out, that they have to do it. And when they do it, it basically is like, everybody's like, what happened to that racket? I wanted it again. And it's happened twice in shoes and a bunch of times in rackets, where literally we're killing it with this racket and then you pull it. Therefore causing like a secondary market. So everybody's going scouring for it anywhere they can find it. Canada, Europe, eBay, wherever, to find that racket because it was so good. So I feel like the great rackets should continue in that old form and maybe make a new version, and then maybe see the numbers kind of even out or have the old one drop off before moving on and making more of the new ones.
I so agree with you, because there's an education aspect, right, to choosing a racket and learning about which rackets are out. And if every time you're going to buy a racket, you have to relearn everything, it's like, it's never ending. There's already so many options. And I think that Babolat has been really smart about that because they've had their two main rackets and they tweak it, change it. Sometimes it just seems like it's just a cosmetic change, but people are already familiar with our racket. So if they're loyal to that racket and they need to buy a new racket, they're probably just going to go and get that one instead of learning all the information about all the new rackets are in the market. That's why I feel like, at one point in my life, I played with Prince, and then I just couldn't keep up with all the different rackets that were coming out. I was like, well, what happened to the one that I like? I don't want to change necessarily. I just want a new racket, but new-ish.
Right.
That new to me.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
And sometimes when they screw up the new version, it even makes it worse. I mean, if they made the new version better, then hey, we all win. But if they screw it up, then it's like, oh crap. Then we have to live with that. We have to live with it for 2 years. So, and then we have to wait the 2 years to see if the next generation of that gets better. So that's what I feel like the manufacturers do is they make one great one, right? Probably didn't realize it was going to be that good. They think the next one's going to be better, yet they screw it up. And then they spend 2 years trying to figure out how to get back to this one, the original one. And then they struggle for a while. And then we struggle as players too, because we're searching for old rackets again.
And what about the other racket sports? Are you selling pickleball equipment, or I don't know what people play in California? They probably don't play platform or padel.
Padel we have one place that do padel out here, so we just let them sell that stuff. Pickleball has gotten huge out here.
Everywhere.
We've been selling pickleball for about 12 years. Up until about 3 years ago, we would literally sell one paddle per month and one sleeve of balls per month. And then when like pandemic hit, it like skyrocketed. Literally, I sell over 20, sometimes over 30 paddles a month now. It's gotten ridiculously crazy. Yeah. I've played it twice and I get it. It's kind of inclusive. Any level can play with any other level. You don't have to run too much. It's fun. So the learning curve is not huge.
Right.
So it gets people out.
Absolutely. And I've noticed with pickleball players that maybe because it is newer to them, they're still kind of playing around with paddles. And I've seen players that have like 5 different paddles. And I don't know what the difference is. I'm like, just give me whatever, because I don't know anything about pickleball paddles, to be honest with you. But yeah, people seem to have like all kinds of paddles. And I think a lot of times it's maybe cosmetic because you can, because it doesn't have strings, you can put logos on it and colors that you like and things like that. I don't know how much of it is actually like a technical thing of the racket, but
the white ones sell better.
What's that?
The white ones sell better.
Oh, interesting. Because
they're white.
With someone and they're like, that shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't be able to play with a white paddle. I'm like, why? I guess because they can't see the ball or something. I don't know.
That's going to be the ruin of pickleball when people start criticizing little things like that. I feel like right now it's still in its infancy, and just go play. Don't get so technical about it. I mean, the real key to the paddle is it's the same thing as tennis. I mean, the more you spend on a paddle, the more graphite you're going to get. The more solid it's going to feel. That's just a generalization of paddles and anything that has to do with like a racket sport. And the more expensive you get, the more solid it is, and the more better material it has. So it's not rocket science.
I just don't take it that seriously yet. Anyway, I'm not that serious with pickleball, but I can definitely see that players have multiple. Not like in tennis, like they'll have one racket that maybe they have 2 or 3 of them, but it's the same racket.
Right.
So anyway, But before I let you go, I wanted to see if you could share with us the grand slam moment of your tennis career or your tennis industry career and the double bagel moment. So the high and the low.
My playing career or
Anything you want to share, maybe as part of the being in the tennis industry, being in a pro shop, anything that was super cool, that was the high moment, and anything that you're like, dang it.
I mean, I feel like I have, high moments on a daily basis. I get a high when somebody pretty much comes up to me and says, "Thank you so much for that recommendation. That was a great recommendation you gave me, and it definitely worked." That means I'm doing my job, and that means I'm doing it well. So, I just get gratification from that. Like my bagel moment, where was I? High school, playing the number one guy in the Northern Cal. I had no chance. I basically resorted
you get
to
double bageled.
yeah, I did. I got double bageled, literally. I basically resorted to standing in the fence, and then I did everything I could to return the serve. And it was a lefty. He had a booming first serve, and then the second serve would literally go over my head. I basically just started going for broke just to end it fast. Whatever came to me, I swung as hard as I could, and then I think I was off in about 30 minutes, 2 sets, 0-0. And I was like, "Good game, bud. I wasn't gonna lose. I wasn't gonna win anyway. So why make the torture longer?"
Yeah, I just did a podcast with someone else who's also in YouTube, and one of his lows, or maybe it wasn't his low. It was something he mentioned was the trolls, the online trolls. Do you get much of that on your videos? How do you handle that? Anything you want to share about that part
So
of it?
here's the thing. I don't have time to read comments. When I first started the channel, I probably read them for about 3 to 6 months because my schedule is so tight and my shooting schedule is even tighter because I want content every day. I don't really have a whole lot of time to look at the comments. So
Good for you.
I don't, yeah. So it's good and bad because I don't really get to engage with my audience very much in that sense. But I also avoid seeing the negative stuff. So a lot of I have help in editing and production aside from my wife, and they kind of tell me here and there, like, oh, if they see something more than once or twice, then they'll mention it to me. It's like, oh, somebody mentioned this, or somebody said this, don't do this, and you're doing this too much, right? Then I'll be like, okay, noted. So I don't. So I guess that's another way to keep myself from the negative aspects of doing a YouTube channel, but I don't get to engage very much either. So it's kind of good and bad.
Yeah. No, that's good and good for you because I can't imagine having to deal with that. You're putting yourself out there. It's already hard to do that alone, and then to kind of get negative comments. I can see how that would suck and affect somebody.
Right.
So, I just wanted to ask you that because you have over 1,000 videos. So I'm sure at one point you've had one troll.
Oh, I'm sure I have multiple.
Yeah.
But it's like what I tell people. Like when I meet with my staff for dinner or something, we basically say to each other, people don't understand how hard it is to actually do this. To first be in front of a camera, to talk about something that people actually want to watch, and then have it produced. It's so time consuming. I can't get my coaches that are on the video with me to literally put on an Instagram post. I'm like, you're shooting with me already. We have the footage. Put it on your freaking Instagram. It only promotes you. They can't even do that. So, I wish that the trolls could actually go through what we actually do once and see how hard it is.
Absolutely. And how can people find you if they want to get in touch with you or they want to learn from you? Obviously, your YouTube channel. But maybe
Right.
tell
So,
us on your website and
yeah.
how to
No,
contact.
thank you. Thank you so much. So just go to Tennis Spin on YouTube, and the info section tells you everything. Like, you can email me there. Instagram handle is there. Any way you want to send me something, send it there.
Is that you on Instagram? Because I did DM you, so I didn't know if I was talking to you or was that your wife?
That's my wife. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have time to answer. I answer the emails. I don't answer the Instagrams. So if it's at info at, like, we have two emails, and one is for like the people who want me to test stuff, and the other is for the fans. I'll answer those myself because I have access to them. My wife has access to the Instagram stuff.
Okay.
She'll if there's an answer she can't, if there's something she can't answer, she'll ask me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are a great team. Thank you so much for being here today. I know you're super busy, so I'll let you go, even though I could talk to you all day about gear and whatnot. But
That
thank
was
you.
fun, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Thank you so much for listening to Vida Tennis. Make sure to check out Harry's YouTube videos if you're not familiar with them. You can find him as Tennis Spin on YouTube and Instagram, or on his website, tennisspinusa.com. As usual, you can find all the links in the show notes. I would really appreciate your support. You can help me grow this podcast by sharing the episode on social media or with fellow tennis people, and by rating or reviewing the show wherever you're listening from. It really does mean a lot, and I appreciate you doing that. Thanks for listening, and until next time.